for
I did this again, David, but I guess it doesn't matter.
the same as our head, yeah. Then you start, yeah. Actually.
We're gonna start with. You know, and I think it's practice. And I do revisit it.
Your application, yes, I come up, because that's the like, so that the Zoom folks in here. Third round. Kind of weird. Yeah. You're second.
Yeah, he's got an extra.
Two applicants.
Okay, you signs because it's 10 o'clock. We do this and then we do this. Now it's supposed to. He really remember. You can do that.
No, this is the second.
That's the end. Let's just give them a.
Oh, I see, I see.
So I probably ask this all the time. And tell them, I didn't know. And what I've heard. I'm assuming we gotta do that.
Yes. Put in your application. And then needed to change on board, so that's part of it.
You know, so thinking too, it's like I should have something, that's why I'm thinking, because we could at least have something that says. Yeah, I think that's. Standing. Well, I want people, I mean, you never know.
You're smoking a good little bit.
The only item that's being sliding gas or. Well, it's security drive. It's like. You're probably the security drive. You block the trail.
Saying whistle.
I use my instruments after 7, so the third.
Alright.
So you're recording.
Yes.
Yeah, it was already here.
Oh, that's convenient. Yeah. So welcome everybody to the May 23rd Danby Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. And let's see, I'll call the meeting to order. And that's going to be the agenda tonight. Any additions, meetings? And the approval of the April 23rd meeting.
Thank you, David. Who's right over that? Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second that.
Thank you. Toby.
Dean,
Yes.
John,
I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't abstain. You don't have to, but you can.
Okay.
Sam,
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. And I'll remind everybody, as David just did to me, feel free to remind me back to turn on our microphones. Do we have to turn them off when we're not talking? You can get any feedback?
So with the wireless mics, I do recommend you turn it off. With the wired mics, there's no need to. Sometimes with the wired mics, they interfere with each other, we get feedback. So if you start to get a hum or something, you can just turn it off. You can leave it on if we're not having any of those problems, if that's easier for you. Or you can turn it on and off every time you talk and never, ever forget.
Like a command. Okay, well, we'll move into our, thank you for approving the minutes. We'll move into our new business for tonight, which is reviewing two applications. The first application is for Kathy and Tom Walter. And I see that Walters are on a line there. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
We pronounce it Wouters.
Wouters, thank you. Okay.
No worries.
And let me describe our process before we ask you questions, which are, I'll ask you to briefly or to describe what you are applying for. And after that, we'll open the discussion up to the public. And all your neighbors within a 500-foot radius have been contacted, and anybody else, Danby and anybody, I suppose, can weigh in as well. And then we will close the public session and deliberate amongst ourselves, which will probably continue to involve interacting with you and asking questions. So before we do that.
Do you want to talk about the traditional ones?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So our board consists of 5 members. That's a statutory requirement. And in order to approve your variance, we require a simple majority of that 5. So that would be 3 people in affirmation. Tonight, we're down to 4. There's a good possibility that the 5th member will show up, but your chances are changed now. If you're a gambler, there's probably some calculation now that you'll have to factor in. Normally it would be 3 out of 5. Tonight it would be 3 out of 4. So given that, you can postpone your application, you can withdraw it, and we can pick it up next month, or we can continue.
We're okay to continue, if that's okay.
Good. And I probably should have asked this first. Is there anybody on the board that feels like they need to or would like to recuse themselves for personal or private or professional reasons? Okay, so you're still at 4. Your odds have not changed.
Excellent.
Okay. Okay, so David, I wanted to thank you for, it seems like you've changed the format slightly of how we get the information. By, now I've combined some things.
Oh, it's clear around.
Yeah, is that new this month or?
I don't think I always do it.
Okay, I'm glad you always did it tonight. It's really helpful. So David did summarize David West, the planner, did summarize your application, or maybe in consort with you. Our process also involves weighing, we have a balancing test that consists of five tests, which you're aware of because they were on the application and what you've responded to already. We're not bound to, we're bound to considering them, but we don't have to look at each one of them and approve each one of them, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Excuse me. I'm good. You see, I call. Okay, we'll carry on with that then. All right. We do, yes. Okay. Thanks for calling back. All right, I'll get this started in real time. Lou will not be joining us tonight. So there are 5 tests that we consider, which are whether undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties. Number 2 is whether the benefits sought by you can be achieved by feasible alternatives to the variance. Number 3 is whether the requested variance is substantial. Number 4, would the variance have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood? And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. So now what I'd like to ask you is just kind of go over again what you're asking for, and think about those 5 areas that I just reviewed. And if you want to add anything to it, feel free, even if it feels like it's redundant, you know, and information that you've already provided to David or on the application.
Sure.
So with that,
Oh, sorry. First, thank you so much for letting us be here. We're really excited to be starting to talk about this project. We bought the property last year in April, and we're looking to start developing so that we can bring back some agricultural uses to the properties in the coming years. So we've done an assessment of the structures that are on the property right now, and one of them is a machine shed that's approximately 70 feet by 20 feet, give or take a few feet, that overhangs the property line onto 2022 Danby Road by a few feet, according to the survey we received in purchasing the land. We've taken some time to talk to some contractors and some people who have worked on this property in the past. And what we're looking to do is to demolish that shed, because 1/3 of it right now is completely collapsed, and then the other 2/3 of it are just not structurally sound. It's actually really interesting engineering. It's built with trees from the property, so it's really cool, but unfortunately it's not safe. And we are hoping that we can get permission to take that machine shed down and rebuild a smaller building that's approximately in the same footprint of that building. And by doing so, bringing the shed completely onto 2016 Danby property, so that it's not overhanging into our neighbor's yard any longer. We have tried to think of some other place to put a machine shed. There's a couple of reasons why we're starting with this building. One is there's not any lockable, like really lockable space on the property. We're going to be probably coming and talking to you guys about our house plans in the future, things like that. But in order to do so, we need to have a place to store supplies and some vehicles and things like that in the meantime. So that's why we're starting with the machine shed. And we also, because of its location to where the original house stood, because the original house used to be between 2014 Danby and 2022 Danby. It used to be like pretty close to the road frontage. There's already an existing well and septic there that we're hoping to tie into that building so that we can get water to any livestock that we may have in the coming years. So that's essentially why the building, like we didn't look at anywhere else to put the building because it would require us to redig a septic and a well, and we're trying to work within the constraints of what's on the property already. But we're hoping that since the building already exists, it's dilapidated, we're hoping to improve the look from our neighbors' vantage point, so it's something nice to look at. We're hoping that that outweighs the fact that it still is on the property line, or like close to the property line.
Good, thank you.
I was thinking I might just share the screen quickly, or I think that's kind of the most apt visual, just so you can see where the red rectangle is, and behind it the slashed area showing the existing building and how it crosses the property line, and how they're proposing adjusting to not cross the property line and not quite be on it.
That was one of my questions. So you're actually pivoting, the new shed would be pivoted relative to is there a reason for not being exactly on that angle and as far over to the northwest, I think, as possible?
There's not a specific reason other than I did it because the variance, it said, how much variance are you asking for? And we just made it simple that the variance would be 45 feet across the entire building. But there's not a specific reason for it to be angled one way or the other than it to be pulled off of the property line as much as possible, without running into the other buildings as well.
And if it's 30 by 50, 30 by 60, I can't know like that right now.
30 by 50.
30 by 50. So
Let's open the floor up to public, and then that might help our questions, or shouldn't impact them. So at this point, we'll open the floor to the public.
Yeah, open the public hearing.
Open the public hearing.
Yes.
Thank you. And David, were there any written correspondence
Not on
submitted?
this. Yeah, no, there was no calls or written correspondence on this application. Is anyone online here to speak about the first application for 2016 Danby Road? And
no phone conversations with anybody?
Nope.
I drove by and I didn't see the posted signs. I must have missed them, right? Are
No.
there?
They were there.
They were there. They're still there. Yeah. Okay, so having heard no comments from your neighbors or anybody else, we will close the public session and open it up to deliberations.
It's pretty clear cut situation where you have to remove that building. That can be a issue if you try and keep something like that crossing a property line. Fairly clear cut situation, I'd say.
And when you bought, how long ago did you buy the property? Pretty recently, right?
Almost a year and 1 month.
Yeah, April 2022.
Yeah, we had a hearing about subdividing the house to the north
Okay.
off that lot. And I guess you were the folks that bought it at that, just after that.
Yeah, and it basically makes the front part of our property kind of, it's only 100 feet wide at its narrowest point. So there's not a lot of space to put anything right there. And this is the closest to, as Katherine mentioned, the septic and the well that's there.
And perhaps not relevant, but if you put a house in it, there's not really enough space to put a house in that front section. I mean,
No, we would have to put it much further up the property.
And was there an agreement or anything with I assume it must have been surveyed, right? When you purchased it?
Yeah.
Correct.
Were there any agreements with the front property owner?
The new parcel was the only one that was contacted, I believe, when the new survey was created. We haven't talked to the owner of 2022, which is the one that's this building is affecting.
I recently, or it's been quite a few years ago now, my neighbor or my neighbors changed ownership of the house, and it turns out our garden fence was on their property, and I had to move it, and then I uproot my garden fence and moved away.
Yeah, we have that here. Where we're at now.
The barn that's there now, is it sitting on a cement foundation, or is it
It's it's a block foundation from what we can see.
and that would be removed and the new one put in place?
Yeah.
Correct.
So let's talk about what you're going to put there. So it looks like you were talking about pursuing some agricultural endeavors there, and this building would assist with that.
Yeah, so it would, I think the main purpose would be for storage, like we probably have a small tractor, some, mowing equipment, a few other pieces to, take care of some animals that, just to sort of want to protect from the weather, and also just want it to be safe. Because as Katherine mentioned, right now, there's nothing that we can lock really, or we can lock it, but you can just kind of rip a panel of wood off of it and get in that way. So that's the main use, and just having something where we can have a sink, some water that we can use for the animals or to wash ourselves and things like that.
And is the building, the picture of the building that you provided, is that what you still intend to have put in its place? Looks like a three garage.
Yeah, we're planning 3 bays, and then I think the only thing that would probably change is the color. Just because white, I feel like it's gonna get dirty real fast. But yeah, essentially the company that makes that barn makes it's sort of a pole barn kit, and it has metal siding. And you can do, it's wood frame, the wood frames and posts, so we're hoping to do something that looks like that, but probably I'm thinking like a different color.
And so there's a fair number of trees between that machine shed and the neighbor's house. They don't see it all that much. Are you planning on leaving those there? Also, it's kind of a field.
Sorry, moving what?
So there's trees behind the existing machine shed. Oh, sorry. I forgot to push my button because I'm not supposed to ever forget that. And there's trees behind the existing machine shed.
Mhm.
Are you going to leave those there as kind of a barrier between your property and the other?
Yeah, hopefully we can leave the trees, like I don't want them to be moved or touched. They're beautiful. And then if we can do some sort of shade, like hedge behind it. Unfortunately, it's the north side of the building, so I don't know what will grow there, but I'm hoping that we can kind of fade out the building.
You don't have too much space to put anything in there either, but. Yeah.
Right, right.
But it's pretty well shielded as it stands, but some of that may be in the way of where you're gonna put your building.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go to the balancing test?
I think so.
And that might prompt us continue question. So number one, if granted, the requested variance would or would not produce the following changes to the character of the neighborhood or affected nearby properties. Ted, what's your thoughts on that one?
With regards to the character of the neighborhood, I think it would be positive impact in that you're taking a dilapidated building out and putting a nicer new structure in. So I would say that it would not produce negative characters, definitely positive.
Thank you, Ted. And Toby?
I see it as a positive improvement to the neighborhood.
Price to glasses.
I didn't know that was there. I thought I had a green book.
I'm sorry, Toby. That was rude.
Oh, it's a positive improvement. Definitely.
Thank you. And Betsy?
I agree, and also it's not particularly visible from the road or even from the neighbor's house that much. On 2020, I think it's the house over there, so I don't think it's gonna change anything
Thank you.
for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I agree. I think it wouldn't, I mean, there is something to say about old agricultural buildings, you know, whether standing or not, but I think seeing a farm grow like that has a desirable effect on the neighborhood. All right, and then whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by feasible alternatives to the variance. Ted, what do you?
Oh, you got a 30 by 50 building that you're putting in that spot. It's going to tighten that spot up quite a bit. How many acres is this piece of land anyways? Is it 81 acres?
Needed.
It's 100
That's
acres.
81. Pardon me?
100 acres.
100 acres. Now, tell me again why it was selected, this site was selected for this new building?
To tie into the existing well and septic. And the electric, because the electric also runs at the front of the property.
That is a good reason, in my opinion, and also it's close enough to the road for access with equipment, and you're not going to have to put in some major road way back up onto the hill with drainage and all. That could be a little wet in parts of the year. It sort of makes sense to have equipment shed somewhat near the road.
Right near the drive as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's any advantage, as I said, to shifting it so that it's more similar to the existing footprint. I think you're gonna have to do the same amount of
Oh,
work
yeah.
regardless, and It gets you a little bit farther away on one corner from the existing property line, but it's not much. Don't know how much it would be, but not much.
Thank you, Ted. And Toby,
Oh, sorry.
whether benefits stop by,
There was a pause there. Yeah, I think, there's multiple good reasons for it to be in that location.
thank you, Toby and Betsy.
I agree that, and it's more or less where it is already, so it doesn't change anything much that way.
Thank you, Betsy. And so the septic system is up near the road, is that right, for this picture
That's
Correct.
or this drawing?
Yeah.
And the well, so, and that would be the system that you're using for your residents once that's built?
We will be probably re-drilling a well and putting in a new septic because there's not really a space to put the house by the road. So we will be looking for a different location on the property for the house.
Mhm.
So it keeps all the farm buildings kind of together. And on that septic and well.
Yeah, we're hoping that the farm can exist kind of in that front pasture. And then look for a different location for the house.
Yeah, it's a tricky layout to work with.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to wait on the house siting and get a sense of the property first.
So, yeah, feasible alternatives. I suppose it's somewhat arbitrary what, you know, what's considered feasible or not. So I agree that there are not rational feasible alternatives. Okay, next, whether the variance is substantial, the requested variance is substantial. Ted, what thinks you
Now, I
about
think
that?
what we're looking at here tonight is setback. The zoning currently calls for 50 feet, and we're looking at going from -2 feet to plus 5 feet. So in and of itself, it is substantial. Although it is clearly a positive improvement on the property, it's a substantial, with regards to the variance we're considering substantial.
Thank you, Ted. And Toby,
I agree with that. You said it well.
good. Thanks, Toby. And Betsy,
I agree. It's obviously nice to be kind of at the end because I'm very good at putting things well, so yeah,
yeah, Ted's already done the math for us, right?
thank you.
I agree. It's clearly substantial. And number 4, would the variance have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood? Ted, what thinks you?
No, quite simply, I think that was touched on earlier on. It's actually going to be an improvement to what we have there now. In terms of physical and environmental conditions, it's a substantial improvement because if you've had a chance to look at that building, it's quite a mess.
Yeah.
So, no.
Good, thanks, Ted. And Toby?
Yeah, I agree with Ted, and if I lived in that house 2020, I'd like having that barrier there from the farm operation, and so overall, it's a big improvement, so it will not have an adverse effect.
I'm gonna thank you, Toby, and then Betsy, sorry.
Yeah, I agree, but I think the effect is not adverse. I think it's a good benefit and it doesn't affect the physical or environment.
I'll continue on that vein. I think the only way it might is if that septic tank isn't, so they're gonna bring electric, pressurized well water and connection with the septic system. Electric, obviously, right? I don't remember reading that, but so electric, septic and well water. So if that septic system, for whatever reason, isn't capable of handling it or is old, that could have an environmental impact. But I suppose you'll need that to be permitted, right, David? This is gonna have to go through a permit and that's gonna get ironed out through a whole separate process. So, shy of that, I agree. I did want to ask, I thought I was asking, this does actually have a impact on the physical environment, but also the change in the neighborhood, character of the neighborhood. The drawing we have of the building, which is really impressive. It's a nice architectural style, has lights above the garage door entrance. Which makes sense, on the back side, which the neighbors might see, do you anticipate any kind of floodlights back there or anything?
No,
That
we,
might be-
unless they're required, we were not going to put electric lights on the back.
On the back side, yeah, I mean, that might be something, you know, we're thinking about, and the impact on the neighbors on the road side. And that would have a impact on both the character of the neighborhood and the physical neighborhood. Okay, so last is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. I'm gonna throw that one to you, Betsy.
I think this time it's actually no, in that the building was already there, they were already over the line. So that it was there when they bought the property, there was nothing they could have done about it, they're actually improved.
Thank you. And Toby.
So I'm in complete agreement with that.
And Ted. Whether the alleged
I
difficulty
think
was.
if there were other ways that the applicant could receive the benefit, of utilizing that space, then perhaps you could say, well, it wasn't self-created. Or it was, but, since there is no other way of really making this, farmsteading area work, I'd have to say, no.
All right, thank you, Ted. This is always a really tough question because it's hard to, you know, I mean, I think a lot of us are pretty self-unaware. And so your choice when you bought it was, do we buy this place knowing that the property, you know, this building is on somebody else's land and give up this awesome opportunity? Or do we buy it knowing it? So, you know, in some ways it is self-created. In other words, the building already existed. Somebody else created it prior to your own self. So I would weigh on the side it was self-created. So those are the 5 tests, and David, you took really good notes, I trust.
Yes. Not all your comments.
Good.
Can I make a note for the applicant just for a second? Just so that you folks know regarding lighting on the outside of the building, we do have a dark sky compliance requirement for lighting. So any new lighting needs to be fully shielded, which means it only points down and no light goes out. So if you have questions about that when you get the fixtures, you can reach out to me.
Thank you.
So the motion to either approve or disapprove would include the demolition of the existing barn, or is that's a separate issue? It's really just the variance of 5 feet from the property line.
Right.
I was thinking though about it looked like the barn material, the material the barn, the existing barn's made out of may be of value to somebody, it may be of value to you. And I don't know that we would place a condition on that, but I wouldn't burn it.
Yeah, we're trying to preserve as much as we can. So that's our plan.
There's plenty of things to build, so we need the wood.
Yeah.
Barnwood's worth money.
Yeah.
So I don't think that, so you're sort of leaning, are there any conditions that we would put on this?
On this, is anybody driven
I think
to?
that most of the trees that shield the house in the front to the farm buildings in the back are actually on your neighbor's land, is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so there's
So
not
the matter of preserving visual barriers is not really part of it, so we don't have to worry about that piece of it.
Right. as long as the neighbors keep those trees.
Right, if they
Unless
want
they
to.
wanna look at the back of the barn.
They can take the trees down.
Yeah. Builder's gonna need the 5 feet work.
Yeah, at least.
And I'm gonna change the sharing screen, just so that I want to make sure for the record that we all understand that some of these trees will have to come down, like you can see this one, when the building is rotated. That's going, and obviously this, the one that's basically growing out of the front of the building.
That's how we go.
We're gonna, there will be some, this one here. This will not still be a tree when the
Right.
project. But I just want to make sure we're saying that on the record that the board understands.
Mhm.
Some trees will be,
Yeah.
will be.
But they do, and I don't, in order to put it in.
So if I would make a motion that we approve the variance of 5 feet from the property line for the new structure.
We've got that whole freezing thing.
Yeah,
So
can
it's a
I,
variance of 45.
yeah, I'll put it back on.
Oh, right, it's got to be
Yeah,
reverse,
Well, yeah, the one that we're always
the
confused.
negative, yes, sorry.
There we go.
yes, a variance of 45 feet from section 601.7 of the zoning code is the minimum variance that should be granted in order to preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and health and safety and welfare of the community, because greater setback would require significant costs and additional infrastructure extension or dramatic rearranging of the site. That's what you were saying, right, Toby?
Yes.
Thank you, Toby.
Exactly.
Do I?
I'll second.
Thank you, Betsy.
But we have to do the thing of other benefits, one more than the other.
So from the discussion, I assume we are motioning that the benefit to the applicant does outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood.
That's what I second.
That's right.
Me,
Yes.
John.
Yep.
Lamb,
Yes.
Yes. So the board hereby passes approves your variance request or request for variance. So congratulations and good luck on your building out your farm there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Project.
What are you thinking you're gonna grow? Just because I'm nosy.
So we heard that the farm used to be a sheep farm, so we're thinking sheep at the moment. And then I have to up my gardening skills before I can grow anything that's green.
Great.
But yeah, we're looking forward to integrating into the community. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking of is probably better for during the discussion, but one of the main reasons why there is a setback is to support the agriculture or the rural nature of our neighborhood, and so the setback is kind of double. It's between the building and the lot line, and then your neighborhood lot line and their building. So the setbacks are advantageous to both you and your neighbor. Your neighbor's impacted by this, potentially. There's already building there, so it's not new construction, but when they see you building, since they're not here, they may ask you what's going on. How'd you do that when there's supposed to be a, X number of feet, 50
Okay.
foot? So I just encourage you to meet your neighbors and,
Yeah.
and, they can come to David if, or the town if they have questions.
Okay, great.
Boy.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank the board members for that one. And now we can move to the second one. It's in a row here. All right, so on to the next variance request. Welcome and thanks for your patience. You've gotten a prep.
Sure, if you'd like to.
I guess you heard our process loud and clear. And so I won't reproduce that. Yeah, feel free to sit in front there.
And if you want, when you're speaking, you can come up to the mic, that's easier. So everybody can.
So the second application is from Ashley Ulacco, are you Ashley? How do you pronounce your last name? Ulacco. Okay, thank you. And what is your name? Jake. This is a request for variance to lot size to allow a subdivision of a 7-acre lot from a 60-acre lot where 10 acres is the minimum lot size. And are the owners of the 68-acre parcel online? They're obviously not here. Okay, so that is what the application request is. It's type 2 action, SEQR action, so there are no further actions or reviews required. And that, Cindy, was true of the first one as well. And this is an interesting one for me just because you have not purchased land obviously already. And so we're being asked to grant a variance, but it will also involve a subdivision of a farm. David could go into more detail on that, but so we're being asked to grant a variance, but also for the zoning of the 60-acre farm to be deviated from a 10-acre subdivision.
But it
Which
doesn't
is-
change there on the number of lots that they can eventually divide into, is that right?
Right. So the minimum lot size for the 60-acre lot is 10 acres, the minimum size lot that you can divide off. But one of the interesting things about, being just a little bit more than 60 acres is that if you took a 7-acre lot off of it, you can still only have 5 more lots if they're all at least 10 acres. Whereas, if it was a 67-acre lot and you let them take a 7-acre instead of a 10-acre, they would be getting 1 extra lot. In this case, by letting a lot be 3 acres smaller, it doesn't actually create any more lots than could be created otherwise.
Good, thank you. So I just wanted to kind of present that element, and I was thinking of anyways.
Does that mean that the current lot prior to this being cut out of it is a total of 60 acres?
Yes.
And is it this, is this the 60 acre?
Yes.
Because here's the long, and maybe if you put it up there. Because there's three things we're talking about, the new lot, 60-acre lot, and the existing lot that's adjacent, is that right?
So this is the 60-acre lot. So, yeah, that's the 60-acre lot. And what they're asking to divide is basically a lot. Sorry, it's gonna be weird. A small flag along here, and then mostly this back portion here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your parcel is a phone.
This is
You don't live in the house.
No,
Right there.
it was too big.
Right. Because I was married your Olympic sized pond.
And the map shows that this is connected to your land. Is that
It is, it's not, it's a separate parcel. My mom just built there a couple years, so she just built.
Okay, so it's this, yeah, so then you'd have access to both.
Looks more like that. Huh?
If it was one piece, you'd have one access to both South Danby and Hill Road.
But they're not combined.
Well, no, they don't want to come back.
Yeah, we would.
And then, David, you just drew that line down. Well, we're jumping in deliberations at this
Yeah.
point. Let me,
I was just trying to clarify what pieces we're talking.
yeah, okay. So I assume everybody's done some sort of site visit, or drive by and are familiar with the land and location. Is there any reason that anybody would like to recuse themselves for any personal or professional or any other reason? No. Okay, good. So you had heard my discussion before about, or description about your odds, right? So you have four, you have 3 out of 4, that's right. So if you're comfortable with that, we can continue. All right, good. And something I didn't say in the other one is the state requires us to make a decision within 62 days of the
Close of the hearing.
close of the hearing, right? Okay. You're right, and the hearing will close tonight unless if there's other mitigating circumstances or questions or anything. So, okay, having heard nobody wants to recuse themselves. I read off the 5 balancing tests before in a couple of different ways. Do you want me to read them again or be pretty clear on them?
Pretty clear.
Okay, good. So if you could just share with us what your, re-describe what you're hoping to do.
Vision and how we went about this.
Yeah, add any details like that you want, but basically what you are asking for.
So sure.
Test.
Yep.
So we've been here since 2014, as you saw, at 220 South Danby. And it's been about a 5-year idea that we've always wanted that land behind us. And we're now taking that step into investing into that land behind us. And I think the most important thing is to get road frontage, and we can't do that from Fisher Settlement or from South Danby. So that's why we have to come from Hill Road to make that little adjustment to the lot. We can't afford 10 acres
right off the bat at that price, it would just eliminate the entire discussion of having that investment. So we can afford 7 acres. We did want the lot to butt up against our property, but without combining the two properties. So that's how we came up with that, and we talked to Doug Mackey, the owner of the land,
60 acres.
who owns the 60. We originally bought our lot off of him. Almost,
So he owns that entire corner
yeah.
of between Fisher Settlement and Hill Road.
So we've been there for 10 years, and we have 3 little kids right now, and we're getting into you know, gardening, that type of lifestyle, and that would be the early future vision. That's probably the only vision I think that we have.
We have chickens and garden taking up the majority of the backyard space. We've on the 6 acres now, so we're right up to that.
Can you explain the reason for not incorporating it into the piece that you already have?
I think I just think that it makes more sense to not do that, and to as far as investing, to not have that be a part of our property, but have that be tied to road frontage. I think that's the smartest decision.
It's such a substantial investment for us personally that we feel that it's wise to keep it separate, just in case something, you know, we ever had to sell it off or something like that. I mean, we don't plan on that because we live right there, but to have it separate for that amount of an investment for us personally feels right. Versus having it connected.
Because there's no way to subdivide it. If it was combined with the other, there's still no way to subdivide it. It's not big enough. And so that, if you had to sell it, then that gives you the option of selling a smaller piece.
It will raise your taxes compared to being. Because it's worth it.
If it was combined,
Right.
No, not
it's
combined.
separate.
if it's separate from our property, it raises our taxes.
Because it, like you said, it would be worth more because you could,
Right.
you
It's
could
primary.
develop it, right? Or
You could,
maybe-
if somebody could build a house on that
Sure.
piece. Because it's already subdivided, you could sell it as a house,
Understood.
because it's an existing lot, right?
For us, the cost doesn't change to purchase it, whether it's either way. So
Mhm.
we feel that it, for us, it'd be better as an investment, just thinking with what investment had to do. That was our decision.
So let's say you have a 7-acre lot and someone wants to build a house on it. Would that person who wants to build a house on it need a variance? No.
They have to have a plan review because of where it is.
Yeah, so there will be site plan review required for any new house. But any lot, once it's subdivided, can have a house on it, even if it's undersized. So the time that the size restriction is imposed to that subdivision. But lots that are smaller than the limit that exists already, or in this case, if you granted a variance and it was created subject to a variance, it would be able to have a house in the future.
They'd have
As long as there's adequate setbacks for the house.
they'd have a substantial driveway expense.
So long.
But,
Yes.
I thinking, and then you have there's a little lane on your property, like an existing farm lane.
That's,
So back end, it's hard to tell what that is, but there's trees.
there's a few of those, that's just from when they're planting
Farming,
Christmas trees,
It was all the pines.
Yeah.
all the pines, and that's how they move machines.
That stretch of land where the flagpole is, where the driveway is gonna be, that ground is pretty dry. That, you can build a driveway there pretty easily.
Oh, I
There's
just
one
said,
little bit, but
There's a tiny dip there, but it does dry right there, yeah.
And that one dip closer to towards the pond, I
Yeah,
know that land pretty well. Will get wet in the spring. Yeah.
Oh,
How
yeah, I
wide
remember
is
the
this?
pictures.
Like, when it's
A little further.
So like 75?
See at the bottom, right?
Oh, yeah, got it. Perfect.
well, the angle.
Yeah, 75.
Yeah, so I was on ImageMate and it was the ownership of, you're at 220, right?
Yes,
220 didn't agree with this and doesn't, and your name's not on here either, so. Who is Chamber Krantz?
That's, yeah, that was my maiden.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, I get it, got it, thank you. And then how much land do you have there now?
6.
6 acres, okay, good. All right, so, is there anything else you would like to share with us before, we start our deliberations?
I think that's about it. Just, you know, I thought it would have been a really cool idea to do this on and off of Fisher, something like that, but you can't do that over there on that. So the second option would be from Hill Road and then the long 1,000-foot, 1,500-foot driveway, which I'm well aware. And back here, as you know, it's really nice in there. And we've walked in here, it's on our property, but we had fun in there, we just fallen in love with this spot here. And just to have 3 young kids, it's just an investment for the family future. That's kind of why we're here. That's it.
Perfect, thank you. And you'll have more opportunity if you think anything else. Dave, was there any, now I can open the floor to the meeting to, what am I opening it up here?
The public hearing?
Public hearing. I'll open the meeting up to public hearing now. Dave, was there any correspondence, telephone?
Yes, there was one phone call today from a neighbor on Hill Road who said she has no problem with the proposal.
No, I mean, is it,
I did not ask her address. I can get her name if you're curious. It's on my desk. I just
but
realized.
they're within the 5.
Yes. She said, do I have to come to the meeting? No, it's not a summons.
Was she just asking questions or?
No, she got the notice and I guess she was unclear if that was telling her she's required to come
I
to
see.
the meeting.
And she had no
Concerns.
concern.
She said she had better things to be concerned about.
Well, as a matter of fact.
I enjoyed, when I took a look on Hill Road, I enjoyed seeing the property across the road that we gave a variance for that pole barn.
I saw that.
I'm beginning to think I've been on here a long time when the two properties that we had today were things that we've already done something nearby or with.
Yeah, and you know that.
Yeah, he did a nice job, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
And I will mention just for disclosure that while I was up there looking at the property, I paid a visit to your Cross Hill Road neighbor, Walter Drake, about another matter, and we didn't discuss this, but he voiced no objection. He's way back in the woods, a little ways just up from that.
It was Walter's wife that I heard from.
Oh, okay, good.
Blanking on him.
And nobody's online that would like to add to the public discussion?
Oh, Brian is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
Brian, do you want to unmute and say something?
He's having a coffee break.
Well, he wrote something in chat, but
Yeah.
oh, it just flipped, so maybe he's trying to get on.
Oh, Brian, you keep unmuting and then remuting.
What do you write in chat?
He wrote in the chat, concerned with the driveway along the 16 Hill Road property line.
So Brian, you've written in the chat that you have some concerns or thoughts about the driveway. Now is the time to elaborate on that? while we have the public floor open?
Also, there's no guarantee that there'll be a driveway down that flagpole, right?
You're not planning to put one in this stuff.
It's just to give you, just get parcel access, should you want to sell it. Yeah. I don't know if that helps, Brian. I won't let him unmute.
Well,
Can you unmute him?
no, he has to unmute himself.
Who was Brian?
Oh, you almost had it, Brian. Not sure. It's a pretty common.
Is it
last name.
worthwhile having him call in? Can he call you?
He can. Brian, if you would like to call, maybe if you get, I have that phone. Oh, well, you can call the Zoom number, which is, I'll put it in the chat here.
Now, you're in the Ithaca district, aren't you, the school district?
No, I expected that.
Or,
Here in Cincinnati.
oh, okay, I thought maybe the line,
A little bit.
really?
If you call that number, Brian, and you put in this meeting ID. We can hear you by phone.
Interesting, because Mackey's property is essentially a large rectangle here,
Mhm.
and the short side is on the road. So if he chooses to break that into 6-10 acre sites, there's gonna be a problem with road
Access.
access.
We can ask David about that.
I don't know if Mackey's got any plans. I know he used to own that whole block.
He had it on the market the whole 60
Yeah.
Oh,
He does have the whole thing as one piece.
years hours.
I guess we can buy time if this is okay, David.
Yeah.
Does the new zoning that requires a minimum of 10 acres trade off road frontage? There is no road frontage requirement, is that
Because you can
correct?
build lanes.
Yeah. So you can do flag lots.
Here we go.
All right.
Yay.
Hi, Brian, you're gonna need to mute your iPad speaker. And then we won't get an echo. I think you fixed that.
Better?
You can say-
There you go.
Is that okay?
I think we heard you. Can you let us know, tell us your first and last name?
Brian Sexton.
Thank you. What would you like to offer?
My only concern was if they do put a driveway in, being able to see it from the Hill Road address, and also what it's going to do to where the water comes from for the pond. You know, if there can a way to keep that as a natural. I mean, I know you need a right of way, but if it's a natural right of way of some sort.
Did you get that?
Yeah, so he's concerned, about being able to see the driveway from Hill Road, but also that it's. Concerned about seeing the driveway from Hill Road, but then also, how it would affect the water that goes into the pond.
Oh, the water
Right.
doesn't feed the pond from that area.
Doesn't look.
The pond is not fed from from where that driveway is.
Okay, I think that's what he was asking.
There's no, if you walk on that piece of land, it's very dry. And years ago, there were some fish ponds on one side of it, but they're filled in. But that pond is a water table pond. It's not fed by anything in particular.
Okay.
Mike, did I get that right? Jake? It's a water table pond, right?
It's.
I don't know of any feeders for it.
Which, Brian, which pond are you talking about? And could you share your address with us?
Yeah, the big pond on 16 Hill Road.
15, so that's the big 16, sorry, that's the pond that you can see in the pond.
Okay.
No, I just want to clarify and make sure that folks heard. I think what I heard correctly is not that Brian was concerned about seeing the driveway from Hill Road, but seeing it from 16 Hill Road. So
Oh,
from
sorry.
Correct,
here,
correct.
the view this way is what he's concerned about. And then also that water flowing this way would be interrupted.
If there was a driveway there.
Yeah.
Can you give us some topographic ley lines?
They are
What kind of-
on and they are very dim. And so this right here is 1500,
Okay, got it.
which loops around and continues here. And there's a little swale. There's a little peak here. So this is 1520. So these are 20-foot lines. So this is 20 feet elevation gain from here down to here. So the elevation, but this is a peak of a hill right in this area, and it would, flow is going this.
So water does flow into that pond,
Not really.
just because it's
It
so
could,
flat.
it could, but the drainage is good enough that I've never seen it happen.
Okay, good, right, so, visibility of the driveway and watershed, were there any other, thoughts that you wanted to offer or questions?
No, those are our main concerns right there. Just that if you do put a driveway in there, the tree removal, that it would take, some of the pine trees you have to take down in order to, because it's only, how long is, or how deep is that flagpole? Is that like a 70-foot wide strip?
It would be 75 feet from your corner, lot line.
Yeah, the driveway would be about 1,000 feet. I think that's what you're asking.
Oh, okay, got it. And that's
Someone,
what's our orientation here? That's,
Hill Road's on the top there.
Yeah.
so that, that's, northwest. All right. The driveway.
This is pointing north and south.
Brian, you were wondering the length of the driveway or the depth?
The width, the depth of the driveway. So like that 75 feet, and the way you have that line right now, you can see how many big trees are in there.
Yeah, got it. All right, anything else?
No, those are our concerns right now.
Which of these is Brian?
The one with the pond, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So 16 is the one with the pond.
okay, I got you, thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you for your participation and your comments. We appreciate that. Are there
Okay.
any other individuals or entities that would like to share any thoughts? Having heard none, we'll close the public hearing and open up the deliberations. Anybody have any initial questions, thoughts?
Well, I will start if you want, by saying that, I listened carefully to, what, Brian, I didn't get his last name, his concerns. I mean, given that the Ulaccos are not planning to actually build a driveway, obviously, it's a moot point for the near future. If they didn't buy the property, I mean, anything could happen there. So, I mean, there's a certain amount you just can't control. Certainly it's possible someone would put a driveway there someday, just as they may put a whole slew of houses on that Mackey property. So I mean, certain things you just can't control. The drainage, properly built driveway should not be channeling a tremendous amount of water into any particular location, or it can be controlled. But, that could be years in the future.
Would that be part of the review, driveway counts in that plan review or not?
I wouldn't put a lot of faith in that.
How many feet does the Mackey, is that the landowner is the Mackey's?
He's the one with the 60 acres.
Yeah, how many feet of road frontage is there on Hill Road?
About 1,100.
In that 60 acre, 1,100. And can you refresh us on the impact on the road frontage requirements for rural one? Is it rural?
Yeah, it's very easy. There isn't one.
There isn't one. Okay, so if there were 6 parcels, you can have as many as 6 parcels. You can subdivide as many as 6 times. There could be
Including this.
one massive. Oh, no, they'd have to each be 10 acres unless if there was a variance. So there could be a massive, long 10-acre lot that consumes most of the road frontage. And then what's the minimum size of driveway?
Basically, there's a state rule that requires at least 15 feet.
15 feet, right? And that's for emergency access and stuff like that, right? So there could be 5 times 15, that's 60 feet, which is less than the 75 we're talking about. And then the rest is one massive lot on the road. Does this make sense? I'm thinking about what the potentials that the landowner could do now are, particularly for information for Brian, which we have no control over. The owner has, the zoning allows for that radical of a scenario where there's 5 driveways stacked up against each other. That
Well,
are,
or driveways plus a lane. So I mean, if you start, because there's not that much access potentially to the road, you could start putting lanes in, so you'd have even more impervious surface.
how does that work? Oh,
Because if you had to put a lane in so that people could get into their parcels,
A shared lane.
shared,
I see.
I mean, a lane as opposed to a driveway. So essentially a private road.
So were you saying the 15 was for a lane, or would that be for a driveway?
So basically, any parcel to get a building permit under state law has to have at least 15 feet of frontage on a highway, which is like a public road. Or a private road.
Got
I
it.
think Brian was maybe saying,
Well, given that it's 75 feet, I mean, there's some leeway there for the placement of the driveway and how much it would be hidden, so
I did a little calculation. If you want to make this 10 acres and you want to increase by moving the lot line to the west, you would have to go 27 feet. So the maximum would be 102 feet for 75. So either way, you're going to get a driveway there.
Right.
Even if you don't need a variance and you bought the additional 3 acres. So it's
if you bought the 3 acres along the.
along
like
that
whole-
long stretch there,
Yeah.
you would have to go over 27 feet to make up the acre. So
Oh, I see.
you're guaranteed a driveway there one way or another.
Well, there would have to be just to get access.
Right.
Unless they came across your property. I mean, we're kind of debating a potential.
These are the.
But I think it
alternative-
comes into the
feasible alternatives.
conversation of, yes, it's, so what are the alternatives to the 7-acre lot? And one is buying more land and the other one is connecting it to the existing lot.
Well,
Neither of which you really want, but
right.
I don't know, are there other alternatives?
So you had said that the 60-acre parcel was for sale. Do you know how long he's been trying to sell it for?
And I think it was on the market. I was in real estate for a little while, but then has been out for a while, so I think it was on for like a year or so.
And it was the whole parcel that was for sale.
Would he sell, I know this is kind of a moot point, but would he sell you an additional 3 acres if you wanted it?
We talked about the 10, but again, couldn't afford the extra.
And he's pricing it on a per acre basis. Yeah, I'm always a little bit, me personally, uncomfortable with talking about pricing and stuff like that, because I don't know if it's relevant or appropriate. But if he wants to sell the land, you know, it may be an all or nothing kind of deal. And this is a conversation that we would have with him, or that somebody would have from the town with him, but that's why, and I maybe should have anticipated this. I think it would be really important for him to be here. Because we would be granting you the variance, like I was saying before, but the dilemma is then we're putting the planning board in a position of, well, no, it wouldn't impact the board, but you know what I'm getting at, you know, so, you know, this is where, you know, if anybody else has similar concerns, we can table it and bring the landowner into the discussion. And
I don't, he's not applying for the variance, really. I mean,
Although it does affect him, but still, or affects any future development.
I think Ted's math shows that, I think you can assume in the future that Mackey parcel is going to be divided in some fashion. And more than likely, there'll be a driveway within 100 feet of the pond property, of Brian's property. And so, I mean, I understand his concerns, but I think it's not something we can really address or regulate or I don't think we can deny the variance based on that.
And so I'm assuming also, I guess like one question that I have that relates to Mr. Mackey is that if he understands that selling this parcel doesn't increase his number of potential parcels. And just in the interest of, if you say, you know, that it doesn't change anything, and then, okay, maybe, again, we're talking about pricing, which isn't really our purview, but he'd make you a better deal on the 10.
yeah, it's not linear proportional.
Yeah.
Linearly proportional. Does he understand? Did you've talked to him about?
I've talked about, so we talked about these lines and if they would be okay. And I made it clear that they are allowed for annexation, moving the land onto their existing parcel, but not for a subdivision because of the minimum lot size issue. So ultimately for the board, what you're gonna have to decide is the magnitude of the damage to the neighborhood of kind of allowing something that doesn't comply with this. How much does that hurt, and balance that with how great you feel the benefit to the applicant is of paying less or a smaller lot.
The benefit of the applicant for what? Sorry.
For paying less for the lot.
Got it. Okay.
Or being able to afford the lot
Yeah.
versus annexing it. And if you annex it, you don't need us.
Right.
Right. I mean, one thing I would like to have some kind of institutional memory of is if Mr. Mackey comes back and would like to get a variance to subdivide it into more than 6 or 5 additional, that we remember. We gave him a buy for this one, but then that's not your problem.
You could make it a condition.
If this variance is given, but no further variances be. Or,
I don't even know that it needs to be that, but just that, that once the subdivision happens, the remaining, divided into more than 5 lots.
And that's, I just want to make sure that he knows that.
Yeah,
But you've talked to him, so.
I mean, that would be the case regardless of the variance.
Right.
Because of the zone.
Right. But we are,
So
but
that's
we are
together.
making it, we're making a variance on this one to be smaller, and so then it sort of sets a precedent that, well, then you can make a variance on this.
Right, and if all of those came to you and you had a condition at the beginning, as long as it tracked forward, that you could have no more than 5, then you could,
You sort of-
technically, you could make 4 more 6-acre lots. And then the one you.
The last one is gonna be
bigger.
Yeah. That's right, so that doesn't preclude making additional variances, even if we say that there's a minimum number or maximum number of 5.
Right. And there is also a process, the cluster ordinance, a cluster provision that allows you to, kind of average the size. You can have smaller lots and bigger lots. It comes with some other provisions, like when you are in a cluster, the houses in a cluster have to be a big setback away from the next closest house. And one lot at a time, it's not the spirit of the cluster provisions. The cluster provisions don't say you can't do it for a 1-lot cluster, but obviously that's not.
No.
The point of cluster is that if you was to think about the whole parcel at once and put the 6 houses on, 6 acres all together in a little village and then preserve the rest of the parcel, that would be really the best.
That's kind of the
The
spirit.
best way that the lot could be developed and minimize the impact of that. But you have to think about it all at once in order to do that, which you don't pay for.
So if this was annexed onto the existing property, you can still only have 1 house on that amount. I mean, they would be able to sell it,
They would be able to add a second house.
but without selling the land. They would be able to sell the land as a separate lot.
Correct.
If it was detached,
If it was attached, they could have 2 houses on the same lot,
right,
but then if they wanted to sell one of them, that would be the issue.
But you can't have 2 detached houses.
No, they could have 2 detached
Oh, they can be
houses,
detached, right.
but they'd be on 1 lot.
Yeah.
how's that? You open-ended question, sorry.
I'm not sure what the question is.
How can you have 2 houses on the one property?
Yeah, I thought we could have 2 family houses that are attached.
You can have 2 family houses that are attached by right, but by site plan review, you can have a second dwelling on the lot in some zones.
I see, yeah, and is that automatic as long as, is that at the discretion of the planning board?
How is at the discretion of the planning board?
Is it, is that?
How it is done is at the discretion of the board. They can't really say, I mean, technically they could say you can't do it, but there's a very, very, very high bar to saying you can't do a use that's allowed by site plan review. But there are lots of things, they can tell you how you have to do that, what you have to do to mitigate the impact,
I see.
how you arrange it.
And I understand that this is an economic kind of decision for you, so, or a investment, so it's may not be relevant. Describe like what the discussions you've had with Mr. or the Mackeys regarding how they, or how you came up with 7 acres, or what their thoughts are to the extent that you can, describe what they're doing.
That actual lot, shape was, I wanna say, if it just went out. We were trying to keep it just level with our property, really, just that little like jut in where it's like, "Ooh, we should kind of like, because of our Some of our garden is right up against the back of there. And
So you're talking about this line here between, this is the back of your property, he's gonna put it up on the.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So this is where all of our garden and our chickens and stuff is all right here. So we're all pretty close, so we said, okay, like this, it seems almost silly, the trees and the pathways and everything, but we don't have. So that was our main, and then they kind of came up with this shape. I'm not sure why I'm missing.
Yeah, there'd be a weird corner left being right, probably.
To do about the 7 acres, and I think that was kind of what we had in mind, 5 to 7 acres. And so to make it that even 7, they just come up with this shape. I'm not sure why. But that way it didn't interfere with the rest of the 60 much. It came down and utilized more of the.
Whatever the lane is in the trees or whatever.
Yeah,
So you started at 5 and then 7's your,
yeah.
I think in terms of kind of 5 acre is the perfect size too. And so stretching up to 7 was going beyond that. Had you talked to him about what it would cost to do 10? What I'm trying to get an idea from, I mean, you can't speak for him, but selling 60 acres isn't the same as selling 61 acre lots. And it's not incrementally, it's not linearly proportional. So adding, I don't know what you're talking about buying it for, but 7 acres for X number of dollars isn't equivalent to 10 acres for X over X times 10 over 3 or 5. You're the math guy. You know what I mean?
I'm getting lost here.
Maybe I think what you're getting at, Earl, is that generally additional acres on a lot are between 1,500 to 3,000 or 4,000 an acre in this market.
At what size that?
Just the additional lot. So there's like a certain, any buildable lot starts being worth, 30 to 40,000 minimum, no matter how small it is. And then each acre you add on those additional acres, once you have enough to have a house, additional acres, the value is, depending on the area and the views, et cetera, between 1,500 and 3,000 or 4,000 per acre. Yeah, is the like just bulk land.
I mean, I'm not comfortable even discussing cost. I don't think that's anything to do with the board. It's sort of common knowledge in the newspaper, but.
I think some of it comes down to you have to judge the benefit to the applicant, like what is the benefit to the applicant? And frequently we have like the benefit of the applicant is they need a room for their, growing family, or they, there's something specific that they need. In this case, the benefit to the applicant is basically paying less.
Yeah.
And not annexing, yeah.
Yeah.
Having it as an investment.
Where I'm coming from is, I'm kind of harkening back to Gary Boyd. He's towards the end of his tenure here, he was feeling really strongly about like respecting the zoning ordinance. And I'm thinking particularly with regard to how much effort just went into this rewrite. And for all the people that participated in that, and deviating from that when we're so close anyways, you know what I mean? Not close in terms of is this substantial, but close in terms of the difference between taking 7 acres out of a 60 acre lot versus 10 acres out of a 60 acre lot. That's just where I'm kind of coming
Right.
from.
But I mean, as David said, the ultimate subdivision of the 60 acre parcel could have some 5 acre lots or 7 acre lots. And
Without any
then
variance.
some larger lots,
With a cluster.
yeah.
With a cluster.
So
Which
I
ideally in a cluster it would be, some 2 acre lots and then a really large lot.
Okay.
That's really what you're driving towards, is making the lots as small as possible.
So that you can maintain the of land.
Yeah.
Can't really see a cluster happening out that far out of town.
Never know.
Well, I
Never
mean,
know.
so that it is a substantial variance, obviously. But to me, it's not that far from the spirit of the new zoning laws, given with the clustering idea and the changes in road frontage and so forth.
And in terms of the neighborhood, there are larger and smaller lots in that neighborhood. Oh,
Yeah,
some of them are
part of that is
historical.
because the lot being subdivided is the first lot out of the low density residential zone. So all of those smaller existing lots are in a different zone.
Oh, okay.
How does it, how is that?
So, put this
So
back.
these small lots here along Hill Road
Yeah,
are in a different zone.
okay. And this would be the first one out of that, you said, okay.
Right, so this lot, basically, the edge of the zone is the back of their parcel and the back of the other parcel. So these lots that are along South Danby Road and near the corner of South Danby and Hill are in the low density residential zone, which is the pink one on the map.
Yeah,
And
including
then,
that little tiny one right on the corner.
yeah.
That's an actual building lot.
Can't remember. I
Oh, it is
drove
a
by
lot.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
A question about that too, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was clarifying what you said, is this the load density?
Yes.
Okay, so after this is where it's going.
Yes.
Okay,
Or starting with the line of the 60.
yeah, okay, because there is so this is the 60. There's a 60 here, and then there's a start on Hill, there's a start of 188 acres, but then there's a little, not far from what we're proposing here,
Show you a better map.
yeah, there's
Must be the
But some of them are historical that just were there, or somebody sold the house lot.
Right.
They
This
kept
is-
the agricultural land and sold the house. lot.
Yeah, so the zoning has changed in the last. Gosh, I think we're almost a full year in the new zoning. But that before, the entire town was in the low density residential zone, basically. Which was creating more small lots and sprawl all over the parts of the town, and that's what the zoning was changed to prevent.
And yeah, so a lot of the people that we're talking to, in other cases that come before us, are because the zoning changed.
Right.
And so, and it's kind of tough when you're like, yeah, if you did this 2 years ago, it wouldn't have made a difference. If you do it now, it does.
Although 2 years ago, you would have 200 feet of frontage.
Right, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's, we used to not be allowed to do flagpoles, or didn't want to do that.
Right, so, are we comfortable with moving into the
I think-
balancing test?
Yeah, I just have to make a small clarification.
Okay,
I said that in order to increase the lot size, they would have to go 27 feet to the west, that's 27 feet per acre. So in order to add 3 acres, it would have been closer to 80 feet,
Oh.
81
okay.
feet.
So they're
Addition.
twice as wide.
Yeah, twice, a little more than twice as wide, yeah. So anyways,
If they added them all the right along.
yeah, so I just need to make that clarification. Yeah, I'm definitely.
all right, good.
Thanks for being the numbers guy.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
All right, so okay, we'll move into the tests here, and the first one is whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties. And Toby, I'll start with you on that one.
Well, I talked about the potential future possible driveway next to Brian's property. I feel could be tucked into that 75 feet and not be a big impact on him. And the drainage, I think that can be controlled. If a potential driveway is ever there, it's really not up, we're not really discussing the driveway being put in. So I don't see it having a big impact on nearby properties. given the varying sizes of properties on that rural spot.
Thanks, Toby. And Betsy.
And as a lot, just a lot, I mean, it doesn't change, I don't think it changes the character of the neighborhood at all. I mean, just buying it to have that land. It's when something else happens that then there's the potential is always there, but the potential is always there. And I think you're right that if you wanted to put a driveway in that amount of space, you could put shrub or whatever to reduce the amount of visibility to the next properties. But again, who knows what will be on the other side. So I don't think it affects the character of the neighborhood in terms of just purchasing it as an additional lot that abuts an existing lot. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Betsy.
I was actually thinking along those lines, what you just said, so I would have to agree with that. It's gonna be 7 or 10 acres, that's going to be a building lot, so I think the character won't really change that much.
And 7 or 10 acres, not as a building lot, potentially, at least
Right.
for the immediate future.
Right.
Okay, so
I want to just caution on that a little bit, that you can't assume that it's not a building lot.
No,
Being
I'm-
created,
I'm not,
it's a building lot, we have to
Right.
assume building. I mean, they could, and then build a cabin Airbnb the
mhm.
next day.
Until we get the new rules.
Yeah.
A 10-room Airbnb, right?
Thanks. Thanks, Ted. And David, I agree. I'm assuming based on what we've been talking about, what you're talking about with an investment, that there will be a building lot on it. And a driveway put in. But the difference between, and so that the impact on the neighborhood is since the current landowner has the right to break that up into a 10-acre parcel with X number of road footage, that would be beyond our ability to have any say in that. And so the difference between a 7-acre parcel and a 10-acre parcel on the impact of the character of the neighborhood, I don't think is substantial.
It's also the point that
Or
if
any,
you build a house on there, the people that it's most likely to affect are you. 'Cause
That's true.
yeah, that's true. That's right. That's right. Good. Okay, so whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by a feasible alternative to the variance. Toby, what do you think about that?
Well, we know that one feasible alternative is to not keep it as a separate lot. But I mean, if you just can't get funds in this market, it's so I see the only alternative in this case is not maintaining a separate lot. But I understand the reasons for you want to maintain a separate lot.
Thanks, Toby. And that's,
So we're talking about economic feasibility in large part. So there is a feasible alternative in terms of annexing it or buying another 3, but economically that's not possible. And annexing it has an economic effect as well. So I think that if you put the word economic in between feasible and alternative, then although I think there are in the larger sense.
Ted.
Yeah, sometimes when we have a appeal or a variance, we make compromises with the person who's making the appeal. One would be, well, can you add 1.5 acres? Can you afford 1.5 acres more instead of 3 more acres? That might be something that in the long run, the Mackeys might negotiate with you and say, well, we can defer the expense of adding an 1.5 acres to this, or 2 or 3 more acres for that matter. So there are alternatives that could be considered. That's all.
Thanks. So benefits sought by applicant achieved by feasible alternatives. So yeah, since you're not only looking at increasing your backyard, but also preserving some investment, element of it. So that alternative isn't part of the consideration. And it's economics, it sounds like. So, and that's beyond our ability to decide what the feasibility of that is. So, I would say that there aren't good feasible alternatives. All right, so the benefit, the requested variance, is it substantial, Toby?
Well, it's 3 acres substantial. Can't really argue with that. I think we can move to the zoning ordinance. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Toby and Betsy.
Yeah, it's 30%, so it's substantial.
Yep. Absolutely.
I can do percentages.
Math works out. What do you think? Did you have anything else?
That's all.
That's
Yep.
it.
Just, yep.
Yeah, I'd say it's substantial. Okay, now would the variance have a adverse impact on the physical or the environmental conditions in the neighborhood, Toby?
It'll have a slight impact, but not as long or not.
Describe that impact.
Sorry, in the, let's see, it is the beginning of breaking up that large parcel, which I think is inevitable. But I don't feel it will have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood district. I mean, yeah, there's there's always some impact. I don't see this having a substantial impact.
Thanks, Toby. And Betsy?
So the impact would be as if it's built upon, and anytime you build something, there's potential for physical and environmental impact on the neighborhood. And talk about how long the driveway is and permeable surfaces and water movement. So there's potential there, but as it stands for the granting of the variance itself doesn't have an effect on the physical and environmental conditions. So that's one of those yes, no answers.
Right, but the last thing you pointed out was if it's a 10-acre lot or a 7-acre lot, the physical and
Right.
environmental effects
Are the same.
aren't going to change. So
Would be similar.
it kind of moved really for
Yeah.
that particular one. So my answer would be like that's easy. I said no.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the driveway would have an impact. You're saying it's dry, but the way,
Well, if you're going to have a driveway and you have a wet area, you're going to have to mitigate that
and let the,
with a drainage ditch or a swale or whatever. Or park your car in the mud.
right. I think that I'm going to add a word to that, a drastic impact on the physical or environmental, or a substantial, let's say, or significant impact to the physical or environmental. I mean, whatever we do is going to have an impact on our physical or environmental. But I would be inclined to say that, given the fact that, like what Ted's saying, that there could be a road there, whether it's 10 acres or 7 acres, that relative difference is not substantial. And then whether the alleged difficulty was self-created.
Well, this one is not quite as clear cut to me as the other one, because you can argue that the cost of the land, sure, you'd be happy to buy the whole 60 acres, but
You could get it for the price of 7.
you know, that's out of your control, what the price of land is, so that part is not self-created, but other aspects of it are self-created and that you don't want to annex it, you want to maintain a separate lot.
Thanks, Toby. Betsy.
I agree on both of those, and, you know, the not annexing it is self-created. Prices is enough.
Thanks, Betsy.
Had the land been purchased for zoning changes, that would be one thing, because sometimes zoning changes can make something not necessarily self-created. That's not the case here. More importantly, there would be alternatives that they could receive the same benefit without achieving a variance, and I think the answer is obviously yes. They can,
You said they could achieve the
Right.
same benefit
Okay.
without.
if the applicant could receive the same benefit in other ways, then it's self-created. And so
By annexing it.
it's very clear that there are options here. So it is a self-created issue. And yeah,
But I want to make sure, just so I'm not agreeing with something that isn't what I understand, that it's self-created by, was it the annexing that was my specific?
sure, well, the annexing is one, absolutely. And the other one, of course, is to save up your money and buy 2 more acres.
Got it, right.
Or negotiate with the seller, which you may already have done, I don't. So, but to answer the question, I mean, we would have to say, yeah, there are alternatives to this, and so it's a self-created issue. It's pretty straightforward.
Thanks.
No,
Okay. Yeah, let's see, so I'm kind of inclined to say it's not self-created if there's a constrained financial reality and, yeah,
no, there's other considerations.
I mean, it could be annexed and in that case, the alleged difficulties, so the request, yeah, so I'm gonna say no, I'm gonna say no on this one. Okay, given that. How'd that go, David?
I'll just say, I think 3 of the 4 of you said yes to 5. One leaving that as the answer. It includes the discussion of maybe the price is not self-created, which is similar to what Earl was saying.
So about this, do we want to do this condition? If we were to grant this, the condition. But I'm confused, can we grant a condition on someone that's not the appellant?
Yeah, because they don't have to do this.
So that we're saying that the condition is that they can still only divide the remaining land, so the 53 acres into 5 max. No matter how, it doesn't say anything about what size they
But isn't that like a given though?
are. That's in the zone.
Yeah.
Zoning requires it, but maybe it's.
And we can't make I mean, there's already zoning there too that says how big the parcels have to be. They'd have to come and get a variance to make them smaller.
Yeah.
And the only point that I was making earlier was, so if you send out, somebody says, well, we want another 7-acre one. And we say, oh, no, you can't have a 7-acre. There are some extenuating circumstances in this one, I think, with the annexation. Perhaps. So it's at the
That's a good
precedent.
point.
Yeah, what do you think about that, David, in terms of setting precedent?
I think it's a concern. I think in terms of things that we've talked about, if you were to move towards saying that wanting to pay less is a significant benefit that outweighs the detriment of a smaller lot, we would have to
It's true for almost everybody.
use, that is setting some precedent that anytime an applicant says, I want to pay less, toward the minimum lot size, I want to have a smaller lot. That is kind of, where we're weighing, is that a detriment to the neighborhood? And the specifics of the case are the things that are precedent setting, not the actual outcome of this variance, but the way that we weigh the values of different things.
And part of it too, then, is the annexation means that then you cannot divide
Yeah.
in this location.
Right.
But that's true of anybody buying a 10-acre lot as well. They couldn't subdivide it, they can sell it,
Sure.
but they can't subdivide it.
So what we're talking about here, for your benefit, is a concern that the town is put in a position. Our board would be put in a position, but we're representing the town where if if the Mackeys had a conversation with another buyer that could only, for whatever reason, they only wanted 7 acres. They come to, the ordinance says 10 acres, right? So that's smaller. They would come here and go through the same thing that you folks are. If we denied it and there was a perceived precedent, that can get appealed, and that's super costly. We've encountered not something similar to that, but we did have a dispute with one of the variances we were involved with that we won because we were in the right, but it consumed the entire Danby legal budget. So, and we want to do right by your neighbors, right? We want, what we're weighing right now is 7 acres going to have a substantially different impact that the intent of the zoning was, which is 10-acre minimum. The farmer might have deep pockets and say, I'm going to hire a lawyer and I'm going to back up every person that comes to me wanting a 5-acre lot.
They can still only sell 5.
That's what, on our side, we were like, okay, 10 versus 7, we can't afford the 10, but 7 isn't much lower than the 10 minimum, so we would feel like we didn't have.
It doesn't sound like it, but it is 30% difference.
Right, right.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, that's
But in this case, you are making it adjacent to your property, which I certainly see the benefit of expanding your property.
Except that in a sense, they're not, because it's a separate lot.
And CJ would always tell me when, or give me feedback when I bring up precedent concerns often is if the precedent it would be a precedent if all the circumstances, like you were just saying, were identical.
And that's why I said the annexation piece is maybe the part that makes it slightly different from somebody else doing it, but it's still a potential up there.
Right. But we're not talking about an annex.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that this situation where it's actually adjacent and connected to another piece of property that they already own makes it a little bit different than maybe somebody else buying a piece for less than 10 acres in there. I'm not sure if it's enough to use as an excuse for why, we granted a variance in this case and wouldn't in a later case.
And so I think that the concern is with regard to placing conditions on the 60-acre landowner. And approving this variance based on those conditions. It's kind of tricky anyways, but.
Oh, there's no problem with that.
But what can we actually say that's gonna make a difference? I mean, we
Yeah,
can't say
it
that
wouldn't-
all future pieces have to be at least 10 acres. Unless it's a cluster. I mean, we can't really say that.
You could,
Can we?
but that's also the zoning.
Yeah.
I mean, generally, I
Does that-
prefer not having conditions just because it's sort of more complexity.
Somebody has to follow through.
I mean, unless it's like planting a bush next to the barn or something, but I think that makes some people quite uncomfortable with, I mean, not saying it maybe isn't appropriate sometimes, but if it's possible to do it without conditions, I would prefer that, but.
And it places a burden on the town to remember the and understand that.
Well, it might be worthwhile to think about the few pieces of the next step of getting to deciding whether ultimately, we're getting to the question of, does the benefit to the applicant outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood? Part of what goes into that is what you've discussed about any detriment to the neighborhood that this would create by not following the zoning.
And is there also the concept of the detriment to the town there?
Yeah, the neighborhood and community, the general we. So the couple steps that we have, the next step would be the minimum variance to be granted, where you're asked, the applicant has asked for a variance of 3 acres, and then we are supposed to state that a variance that you're going to grant is the minimum variance that should be granted to preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and health, safety and welfare of the neighborhood, because why? Why is 3 acres the minimum variance that protects the character of the neighborhood? And then if you find that any conditions help you to get to that point of conditions minimizing any adverse impacts upon the neighborhood or community, that's what conditions would be for, is to articulate an impact, protecting something specific of view shed, and then that's what the condition is going to do.
And I guess part of my problem is I have a difficulty saying that the minimum variance is, the reason for the minimum variance is economic, entirely economic. Because
That could be true. for
it's not
anybody.
that that's not a perfectly valid reason for deciding what you can afford and what you're going to do. But it's a little bit difficult to use that to me as the basis for a variance, just because it potentially can come back in so many different ways. I mean, I think there's lots of potential places where it's like, but I need this property, but I can't afford it. It's still valid, it's a valid reason, but is it a valid enough reason to put in that that's why we're allowing this variance?
Yeah,
Mhm.
boy, that's a really good point. I mean, if you took it very locally, even if you gave 3 more 7-acre variances in the end, you'd still just have 5 lots there, I think. But if you look at it globally, townwide, I know pleading poverty is not a reason to give a variance. No, not poverty, which is not being able to afford something. It's,
Mhm.
well, buy a lower model, cheaper model,
Well, that's essentially what they're trying to do, but
I don't want
the
to build that
study-
into, I don't want to build that into our reasoning tonight.
Mhm.
That would be a flawed.
I'm
That was a
afraid
good
of that.
discussion.
So
Um,
if we can find a reason or reasons to allow this variance to occur, but not include that, I'd be a lot more comfortable.
So you were saying additions, 5 additional 7-acre lots?
Well, I'm just thinking, so what if, at a local level,
Mhm.
Just for the
there's
60
there would be
60 acre parcel.
There will be 53 acres left. And let's say 2 people wanted to come and get 7-acre variances. So then you've got 14, so you've got 39. Can Doug Mackey then break that out into and get 6 lots out of this? I suppose he could. Technically,
You
Kind
can't,
of the
you can
question.
only do,
maybe
this
not.
is the 6th, I mean, this is the, you could do 5 more, is that right? So
Yeah, he
60
gets 5 more total.
But then, so if somebody comes and says, we want to do a 5-acre lot,
Yeah, no, then.
Yeah, that's.
and then somebody else wants to do an 8, that it gets more complicated unless there's actually a cluster. And that is something that Mr. Mackey would be doing, I think, rather than, as you said, not on an individual lot sole basis.
And it would come with other requirements, like those lots would have to be spaced
Right.
far away. Existing lots.
Is it unreasonable to suggest tabling this and having a discussion with Mr. Mackey or the Mackeys?
I
Who's having
still
a discussion with the
don't, I
Mackey?
still don't see that
It's not our purview.
he's not the applicant.
I guess the
No,
question
he's
is,
not
what
the
would you get
applicant.
from,
Yeah.
What's that?
what would you get from that?
Well, then
Of course,
he
you'd
would be,
willing to sell them 3 more acres.
But
he would
would he
be
be
brought
willing
into
to
the
give them
conversation.
3 more acres?
he would be brought into the conversation that this board me anyways, this person on the board, wouldn't want to see an applicant come for a variance for any of the other land. I just would not.
I don't think we can say that.
Well,
We can have the right to a variance.
But we can,
Buyers request.
well, no, I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't be apt to approve a variance in similar situations if he's selling to people that are making decisions based on their financial abilities, and then it's a bunch of 5, 6, 7 acre.
But how do you say that when you've granted one on that basis?
That's where we're tabling it.
That's where we're stuck.
Would it be different for somebody who's just coming in from somewhere for their area or like us or?
Well, that's why I said the
That's
only
where-
thing that makes it slightly different is if the potential for annexation.
Yeah, that's where the precedent needs to be identical. And
But I don't know how to put that in because there is no annexation. It is just being sold as a separate lot. And it's in and of itself.
And okay,
It's a real problem because
yeah,
totally get where you're coming from. I know, and this is like, we can't afford it, but it doesn't work long-term for us. Because then anybody can say that, and we're stuck, we don't know what we do. So it's not that we don't fully understand your situation, it's just that we can't take the liability of that as a reason to, that we will then have to apply to other applications out of respect for other people who are in the same condition. It's difficult.
So
Very
Toby,
difficult.
if you had to fill in that blank that says, you know, the reason for having this as the minimum variance and you can't use economics, what would you put in there? I mean, I'm picking on you, but I'm just.
Well, I mean, before I answer that, I was gonna say, we had other variances where costs were an issue. On Comfort Road, someone inherited a home, they wanted to expand, they did a beautiful job. And it was too close to the lot line. And, I mean, you could say, well, they didn't have enough money to buy more land next to it.
I don't think they could. buy
They
land.
didn't, right, it wasn't available, but.
Yeah.
I suppose we haven't heard specifically someone say they're unable to buy more acreage to follow the zoning law. Maybe we
Yeah.
never heard that.
But that's the only reason that we have. So that's what I'm saying, I'm trying to find something else that I can put in there as the reason for the variance that isn't solely economic.
I mean, if I was
And I
that,
agree with Ted, I mean, I totally understand that it's the truth. It's not like we're saying that, oh, of course you can afford more. But it's a fine line there in terms of what happens if we say, okay, that economics are an acceptable reason for a variance.
Right, that's a tough one.
yeah, and if I was a savvy seller, I mean, this discussion is public, information is recorded, and the recordings are available, and I don't know this person, and I don't want to deny anybody, you know, their ability to sell their land. But if I was a savvy seller, I'd say, hey, ask for 7 acres.
In a way, it doesn't actually affect him as much as it affects the people who are buying it. Because he can only put 5 places in their garden, so.
Right, exactly.
No, I'm thinking he could put, so what are we talking about? 60 minus 7 is 53. If he put, let's just throw out 7, 2 more 7 acre.
No, it doesn't matter, you can still only put the same number, even if they're smaller, isn't that right?
It's 7 acres or 10 acres
We can't
minimum.
variance over and over again
Well, with no variances,
without variance.
you can only put 5 more on the 53, regardless of the size.
That's right. But with variances, and that's the precedent concern.
But that's the concern.
Well, it kind of comes to a precedent that you had recently, is Tomo Shibata, who said, you know, I want to put 4, 8 houses on this land. It's, you know, a different level of scale, but kind of the same situation of, it's an investment. I want to get more for my investment. I want to be able to have more houses on this lot because What's the benefit? I'll make more money.
So that's the economic benefit on the other side, and we said no to that.
What if we said the benefit to the applicant does outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood community in that, it's expanding their space for their growing family.
But to play devil's advocate on that one, then they could annex it. You know, if it's a space issue, then annexation makes sense. If it's an investment issue, I see the value of that, then it comes back down to annexation, it's not an option.
Right, right. And from an investment perspective, putting a house there.
Or even just having the land available to sell. Whether or not, you know, not that you're not gonna put another house on it necessarily, but that you have the option that if you need to sell it, you have it to sell.
Yeah, and 10 isn't gonna be that much more valuable than 7, right?
Well, but it's more valuable, but if you can't afford to buy it, it doesn't make a difference.
So Toby, I hear you are looking for a comfortable way to, and I don't want to put you in the spot here, but if I'm reading you correctly, to make a motion that, that satisfies does outweigh the detriment to the neighbor, that benefit to the applicant does outweigh. Do you want to craft that?
Yeah, I'm
not sure if we can help you, but
Yeah.
but I want to give you a shot at it.
If it was annexed and the shape was different without the flagpole, it still would, still create a second lot in the future, a second subdividable lot, right? From South Navy Road.
You need that road access.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, you know, in any town, anywhere, people have always tried to expand their property if they could. Often it was for farming, but so much here. But it's true, I'm trying to blanket waiting, but it's a reason. Other than that, you know, expanding family, making better property for the family. That's to their benefit. And I don't see that being a detriment to the neighborhood, to the community.
Well, we still end up with the precedent.
Yeah, well, we do with every variance.
Some extent, yeah.
It's a risk of any variance. They claim it's
So what would be, you know, convince me or help me
well,
with a different with and I'm seriously asking about what am I asking? Well, let's talk about or let's continue. I'm not clear or convinced yet about how we could avoid that.
Another direction. Do you want to make a motion that the applicant does not outweigh? Are you prepared to make a motion the opposite?
Good question, because we can vote for or against either one.
Yeah.
Right? Here, I think fundamentally my concern is how do we avoid the precedent? Because I could see, you know, somebody coming in and I just want 5 acres. Like I was saying before, 5 acres is a nice hunk of land to start a little farmstead on or a little homestead. And that, you know, so this is kind of an issue with the landowner and you guys are kind of subject to it right now, but how do we not create the precedent where we can sit here and deny another variance request for somewhat of a
Economic
similar.
reason.
Yeah,
I think we have to accept the fact that this isn't gonna work,
That's kind of where I am.
given the, as presented. It's just, I can't do it. I can't put myself in that position to have somebody in front of me 4 months from now saying the exact same thing and saying, hey, look, you did this on Hill Road. Why aren't you gonna do it for me? I'm gonna get my lawyer, I'm gonna sue the town. Don't need it.
so I don't know if we're all on that same page, but
I feel
I
terrible.
appreciate what you're saying, that.
Well, I
So
feel
at this
terrible.
point,
Make a motion.
Well, and I feel terrible about that, but you gotta understand the position we're in. We're stuck.
well, here's,
I do understand.
let me just say this, and sorry to interrupt you, but your options are you can ask us to table it, and then you can have a conversation with Mr. Mackey or the Mackeys. And that would keep it open. Or we can go through with the discussion, and I think, you know, it's not clear how it'll go. So what were you going to offer? I'm sorry.
I'm to say something very selfish, and I hope I'm crossing the line here with everybody. It's late, we've all had a long day, right here, I do understand the future of Matt, the future of his lots, the land, the future of the decision you guys make tonight. I get it. It's probably gonna come back and bite you. I understand. It's gonna come back and bite everybody, probably. But we're here tonight to discuss the future of my family and my kids. And that's selfish of me saying that. But there's a lot of thought going into the future of everybody else and what's gonna happen. I get it, I really do. But this land is for the future of my kids.
So
And that's why we're here. And that's,
I will ask you perhaps a rude question in response then. So if we said no, that we wouldn't give you the variance, would you get the land and annex it? I mean, and that's,
I'd say no, because unfortunately that the investment is too large of an investment. It's more than what we own right now.
Mhm.
So I'd say,
Or would you get a smaller parcel to annex?
I'm in with any price like that.
Okay.
We have had variances where people have broken up lots, right? That were a single lot. But I guess that would, and it would require a variance. So if you bought the land and annexed it to your property, far in the future, you could apply for the variance to break it. Yes.
Well, then that's probably even more substantial compared to the,
Be
and,
different
yeah,
for
maybe.
One of our tests is whether or not the request is substantial. And this is a 10-acre lot. We're doing an area variance. So what is not substantial? 10%? So what, there's a 30% reduction. No.
Again, it's always gonna come back down to the economics of it.
Well,
Are you saying if it was
so
like,
if they said, well, I need 50 feet, or I need a half an acre, or I need an acre and a half, it's not substantial. That would help our argument, I think.
But aren't most variances have an economic aspect to them? Really?
Not by,
Yes, but they usually have something in addition to that. I think this is the first one that I think I've seen where, and it's, you know, the lowest level, and unfortunately, that's kind of where we are, is that it's an economic decision. So the reason for doing it, the benefit to the applicant is economic. That they can't afford to buy more land, which again, is completely understandable. Other cases, yes, there's been an economic component, but there's usually been something else that went in.
I think I've seen case studies where the argument for the whether it's self-created has had financial disclosures to help describe.
I think you might be thinking about with a use variance, you have to prove that there's no other economically feasible use of the land.
Use,
It's
yeah,
a higher bar.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Now, if we could find precedent where decisions were made in the past based on economy.
Yeah.
I don't know if we could or not.
Just economics.
Yeah. I think that one might be kind of a deep dig, hard to find.
Do you know of any?
No, I mean, all of the variances that have been granted by the board provide more of a specific benefit to an applicant other than just increasing the value of the same side. I think that's actually what's most difficult about this is proving a benefit substantial enough to outweigh the detriment. When the only benefit is a cheaper investment.
Would be, it's, well.
It does, yeah, it is actually more of a benefit than.
So for us, that's huge difference, because we're like, okay, either better. So for us, if you're talking from our point of view, we're like, yeah, that's huge, that's everything. So I get it.
If it was easy, we would have decided.
Yeah, it's a challenging conversation because my concern on one side is the precedent. Are we precedent? Are we setting it and then setting it up for liability? That's my concern. But then the other, I guess, stepping in your shoes, you're not in a competitive environment, so if you were not able, if you didn't get it tonight, nobody's going to come and get it tomorrow. He's not going to say, hey, I have 7 acres available on the cheap, you can't afford 10. And it's easy for me to say, not in your shoes, but then you can go back to the farmer and say, to the landowner and say, you're not going to be able to sell this, and the deal went down, so you lost out, and how can we, renegotiate now? And that's not, I think that's not appropriate for us to be having that discussion, but that's what I weigh,
There are other possible alternatives where you could do a land contract or something on the 3 acres. I don't know, but that's something complicated. I don't know. So but I mean, are you then inclined to make a motion to deny it?
Yes. Yeah, I'm afraid that under the circumstances, that's all I'm left with.
So let's give me a motion. Any Toby or Ted or.
Well, if I just read what it says there, it says the benefit to the applicant does not outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood or community, and therefore the variance request is denied.
Based on the.
But just as it is.
Sentence above, the variance of X number.
Well, because we don't have a reason for why, yeah, so we're denying the variance of 3 acres. That's the minimum variance.
So is that? Okay, so the motion we have to write the motion down, right?
Well,
That is the motion, isn't it?
On the bottom.
One or the other.
Okay, so. That's the motion you put forth. Do I have a second for that motion?
Did you move or did I?
Oh,
I'll move it if you.
I'll second.
so the motion in front of us is the benefit to the applicant based on the requested variance does not outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood or community, and therefore the variance request is denied. And I think the community is the
heavy one.
the heavy duty one. So, here's where we'll do the vote on it.
Dean,
No.
So it means you're
So
voting
no
against it.
disagrees with it. Okay,
Jones,
Aye.
Lamb,
Yes.
Hick.
yes.
Feel terrible,
So-
you guys. That's really sucks.
It does. It's terrible. So I hope you can find a way to do it somehow, but I
Yeah.
don't, wish I had a better answer for you.
I mean, I think this is information for the seller, and I apologize too for the board, for myself and the board collectively, but I don't see it as necessarily the end.
Yeah.
You know, you guys, I know when I get attached to a piece of land, you know,
You'll have
I
that.
own it.
You'll have that.
So keep working with them, and now you have some leverage you didn't have before. You had, you know, a checkbook, which he doesn't know the balance on the bottom. He assumes it, but you now have some leverage, and he's lost out probably. Well, I don't want to say more than you, but he's lost out as equal as you guys probably have been disappointed.
Well, considering it's been on the market before,
Right.
a long time.
So the point that you made in the was a good one, is that it's not about the markets. It's not like, okay, if you don't get it today, then it's gone. Again, it's still not. But thank you for being both patient and putting up with all this, because it's not really easy to turn around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, unless if there's any other business or discussion,
We've got some training coming up in soon. Do you know what that training is for?
I didn't have the agenda, the one that's in Canada.
Yeah.
I didn't either, because I went to it last year. And it had usually some parts of it being somewhere. No, it's, but if there's something that's in there, it's. They took the New York kitchen. Unless you're moving the tower.
and that's August 8th.
August 3rd.
Daughter's
And
gonna
in
be in
Vancouver
town.
is August 3rd.
There's some other place, but I think that's the closest.
Yeah, Capital Region is September 9th, Hyde Park is September 12th, Utica is October 5th. Somebody's probably got stuck. Most landing orders.
Yeah.
October 5th.
So when I went to.
Yeah, it's here.
It's like last-
Oh, uh-huh.
Oh.
Oh, that was last year too, right? Last year? Oh, yeah.
Certificates, do you need that?
Thank you.
Yes, give it to.
Yeah, I wanna thank, what's that? No, yeah.
Just drop it in the black one, right out the door. If you like.
Yeah, he's got one. I think I'm up to date, because I did.
We're working on it. So, yeah, with, hereby adjourn this meeting. Have informal conversations after that, but I want to thank everybody for that, discussion.